Hello everybody. Welcome to the POS Business Analytics Marathon. We're excited that you can join us today for Chandoo and Avi Singh's session on productivity revolution in Excel. My name is Jody Roberts. I'm the leader of the POS Cloud Virtual Chapter. Before I hand over to Avi and Chandoo, we have a few introduction slides that I need to go through. Just around technical assistance. Avi, can you do the next slide, please?
All right, we should be.
Can you do the next? Can you just move the next slide, please, Avi?
Oh, beyond technical assistance?
Yes, that one.
Oh, okay, there you go. Sponsors.
So if you guys need technical assistance, here's a quick guide on just how to get started. If you're having any issues, please type in the question pane and I will help you during the session if you have any audio or visual problems with it. If you have any issues at all, please type it in the question pane. That's on the left-hand side. You'll see a little question mark at the bottom. Yes, at the bottom in the chat window. You can type it in there, and I will pick it up. Next slide. So before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors, Hortonworks and Microsoft. Next.
All right.
Cool. Can you do the next one, please? Right, so just about our speakers. Chandoo has one goal in his life, and that's to make you awesome at Excel. Awesome in Excel. Chandoo holds an MBA, and he's currently the CEO of Chandoo and creator of Chandoo.org. Chandoo is very passionate about data analytics and visualizations. He's also a 6-time Excel MVP. And then onto Avi Singh. Avi is the principal consultant at PowerPivotPro, where he has helped others transform their BI world by blogging, training, and consulting. He is currently co-authoring the second edition of DAX Formulas for PowerPivot with Rob Colley. Both Chandoo and Avi will be presenting at the POS Business Analytics Conference taking place in April in Santa Clara in California. Contact details, next slide please. So if you want to get in contact with him or have any questions after watching this webinar, you can contact him via these mediums. So, Avi, next slide, please. Cool. So the analyst journey. The POS BA Business Analytics Conference is on April 22nd to April 20th to April 22nd this year in Santa Clara. The conference is designed to follow the analyst journey from sessions covering discovery and integration of data to analyzing and interpreting data and communicating insights throughout your business. Along the journey, you will gain the critical business and data analytics skills you need today to stay ahead of the curve. Industry experts and professionals will show you how to use technology to uncover insights and deliver new value to your organization. The unique design of the conference gives you practical and indispensable knowledge you can use immediately. And without further ado, here is Chandoo and Avi with a presentation on productivity revolution in Excel.
All right, Chandoo, you have the reins.
Okay. Hi everyone, this is Chandoo here, and I'm incredibly honored and really happy to be here with you, even though it's well past midnight in India. I had my second cup of tea and just couldn't wait to get started for this BA webinar marathon on Excel productivity revolution. I hope you can see the slides. Even if you cannot see them, I'm sure the past organizers are going to send you a PDF of the slides that contain all the good things that are shown on this webinar. Apart from this, I hope there will be a recording of this webinar available for you so that you could review some of these ideas back when you reach your work. So what I have for you is, for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about small charts for big data. Now, when we came up with the topic of this webinar, which is productivity revolution, obviously there is a lot to cover. So Avi and myself got into a chart, and then we realized that maybe if we narrow down the focus of productivity to charting and visualization, both using Excel and Power BI platform, that would be a good idea. So I'm going to talk about how you can visualize big data and information using smaller charts. That's my topic here. I also have an example workbook. I'm going to showcase that as part of this presentation, and I will give you that workbook. You can download it and you can practice it, play with it so that you can understand better. Okay, so let me go ahead. The biggest problem we analysts face is, it is there is a popular saying, right? Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. We analysts often feel the same. We see data everywhere. There is just too much amount of data, but when it comes to the point of making a presentation or convincing CEOs about a decision, we can't find the right type of data, not a bite for them to eat, because there is just millions of data. So this whole big data revolution, especially with increased capability of Excel to handle data and tools like Power BI, we could now suddenly analyze millions of rows of data with Excel. But the challenge is we can't visualize millions of rows in Excel. Okay, so it's easy to analyze millions of rows, but imagine visualizing, making a line chart from a million rows. You would immediately fall flat, because Excel cannot produce such charts. Even if it can produce such charts, they will be meaningless garbage, because nobody can look at a chart with million data points and make sense of it. So how do we take all the good things that big data has to offer, that is process so much of data and aggregate and provide results at that level, and convert those results to visually compelling mediums? What are the tricks, what are the productivity ideas that you can use to create smaller, easier charts that can convey the big picture? I have 4 ideas for you. Let me go through each one of them. The first one is called as spark lines. This is a new feature introduced in Excel 2010, and this will help us visualize massive amounts of data in less amount of space. Okay. The second idea that I have for you is conditional formatting. Using conditional formatting, you could visually indicate key trends or changes or outliers or values that are too high or too low, or values that need attention in a very quick way. And you could apply conditional formatting for vast ranges of data. So even if you have potentially thousands of rows of information calculated from your big data, you could slap conditional formatting on top of it and it will look really good. The third idea is called as panel charts. I'm going to explain each one of them in the context of a demo workbook so that you can understand them better. The fourth one is creating interactive charts with slicers. Some of these ideas I'm going to explain very briefly in today's webinar. For some of these ideas, like interactive charts with slicers, I'm going to show you a sneak peek, but if you are really keen to learn more, you may want to attend the pre-conference training that I'm running on advanced and interactive charts as part of my past presence. So you can book your slot there, where I'm doing a 1 whole day class to explain the techniques behind creation of such charts. Okay, so let's go ahead and examine these things. If you want to follow along, you can download the example workbook from that URL, chandoo.org/wp/small charts file. Okay, that's the URL. I'm really sorry if it is a little too long to note down, but maybe Avi or somebody will post it in the chat window, so you can also take a look at it. If you are liking this webinar so far, please visit that link, which will send you to Twitter, not when I'm speaking, but at the end of this show, so that you can drop a tweet to your friends and colleagues. Let me jump to the Excel workbook and share that with you. Okay, so I got 4 examples here, one each for the 4 techniques. The first one is on sparklines, second is on conditional formatting, third example is on panel charts, and the fourth example is on interactive chart with slicers. Let's go ahead and examine each one of them. Imagine you have set up some sort of a big data system, and now that system is able to generate a report like this. You have 80 different products. For each product, it belongs to a category, and you are looking at 3-year report of sales or quantity or number of customers, any one of those metrics. It doesn't matter what that number is. And you're looking at data from January 2012 all the way up to December 2014. This is nothing but a potential big data report. You got millions of transactions, and from that we crunched and we generated monthly numbers for previous 3 years. That is the reporting window for us. And we are looking at each name and category and all of these numbers. Now, how would you visualize such massive amount of data? What should we do to make charts from it? Obviously, there are this many data points. You can see from the count here, 2,664 data points are there. So it won't make any good sense if we go and create an Excel chart from that many data points. It will just look like a massive amount of clutter, lots of dots, lots of lines, or lots of bars. So what is the best way to visualize the underlying information? The easiest for me is to create a sparkline. Sparklines are tiny little charts that fit into a cell that can depict trend or underlying information in a very, very concise way. Okay, so here I have created the sparklines for you. Trend for each of the 3 years, 2012, 13, and 14, and this is how they look like. Okay, I'm going to zoom up a little bit so we can actually see these things, and I'm going to hide all the number columns. Okay, so oops, when you hide the data, the sparklines are also hidden. Probably okay. So the other two will come anyway. We'll have to repeat the process. When you hide a column or row of data, sometimes Excel by default would hide the chart as well. Okay, so here is our data and the corresponding trends. Now the same amount of 2,600 data points are visualized in a very clear way with these sparklines. You can spot the underlying trends. For example, 2012 has been a really good year for tea time cookies. The sales are going up, and the dots, the red dot and the blue dot, indicate the lowest month and the highest month. How do you create sparklines? Very simple. You select your data, you go to the insert ribbon and pick one of these 3 chart types and insert them. For a little more about sparklines, please go to Google or Chandoo.org and search for the information. But from a productivity point of view, setting up sparklines hardly takes 2 minutes. So you have your data, just create a sparkline and format them. If you want more in terms of finer control over the sparklines, for example, you wanted to make sure all of them have the same base axis, you could set multiple sparklines and go to the design tools from the sparkline ribbon, group all the sparklines, and set up axis same for all sparklines. So this way you can compare one year with another. Otherwise what we are looking at is each year in isolation, the trend. Okay, so like this you can use this technique of sparklines not only to create them but also to customize them en masse. Let's go and look at second example which uses the same data, but now our focus is to examine monthly trends, month on month, how the numbers are going up or going down. Okay, so here is the same data visualized through conditional formatting. Again, all of these numbers are calculated through simple formulas like that. What we are doing is we are looking up into this data here, the hidden data, and we are just calculating month on month percentage changes, printing them there, and then using conditional formatting feature of Excel, we are adding icon sets to print an up arrow or down arrow depending on the underlying trend. Adding conditional formatting is an incredibly fast and fun way to do data exploration and understand what is going on with your numbers. And you could spot a lot of clear trends. For example, there seems to be a downward trend between Jan and June 2013. Every particular product had a downward trend, and those things can instantly pop out and you can spot them very clearly. Whereas if you look at either raw numbers or even the trends, sometimes that kind of a big picture might miss. Whereas conditional formatting makes it very easy and it shows that information. Again, adding the conditional formatting doesn't take much time, but if you want to know all the nitty-gritties about conditional formatting, go to either Chandoo.org or Google and search about conditional formatting and you will find a lot of useful tutorials. Let's go ahead and examine the third example, which is same data but now visualized at a quarterly level. So each year we have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 total quantities are calculated and printed. Even though this data by itself is small, it is by no means big data. Of course, it is sourced from big data, but it is still a lot of just few numbers. If you select all of this and create a chart, that one chart fails to convey the big picture. You can't really see anything very clearly from this. Okay, this is where a panel chart helps. A panel chart is nothing but lots of charts, one in each panel conveying information about, for example, one category of product. Or you could reverse this parameter and you could have for each year or for each quarter one panel, and you could list the categories here. Okay, so I have prepared 6 panel charts, one each for each type of product category that we have in place, so that we could examine the quarterly trend for them. And you can clearly see the downward trend between Q1 2013 and Q3 2013. So this kind of movement for every category very easily in a panel chart. Whereas trying to identify that kind of a trend in this particular one big chart is very, very hard. So if you want to create a panel chart, all you have to do is make one chart and then copy paste it as many times as you want and just change the data. Now if you are wondering, hey Chandoo, it's very easy for you to say copy paste and change the data, but isn't there a faster way to do it? Well, there is a faster way to do it. Let me copy this chart and paste it here. So that one is for biscuits and I want to change it to cakes. All you have to do is select the lines, and you can see that this is the data range from which that chart is created. Just point your mouse on the blue colored box which contains the numbers and drag it to the cell below. Instantly the chart gets changed. What about the title? Again, do the same, drag it. So there is your new chart with the same setup but sourced from different data. So like this you can clone the charts. You could also use VBA to automate the entire process, especially if you have multiple panels. One thing to keep in mind when you are creating panel charts is that each panel should be having same configuration. That is, if the axis is 0 to 600,000 for first panel, the other panels should also have the same axis. This is very, very important. Again, you could use some productivity concepts like this. You format the axis for the first chart, set minimum and maximum manually, and then copy the formatting. Select the chart, copy it, copy the chart, and then select the second chart. Press Alt-E-S. This opens up the paste shell box for charts. For the second chart, you tell Excel just paste the formats. So whatever formatting information you have encoded in the first chart gets copied over to the second chart. This is a really fast way to copy the formatting from one chart to multiple charts. Again, of course, you could speed up that entire process by using VBA, but if you have only 5 or 6 charts, you could do it like this and avoid the macros. Now comes the last part of our example, which is setting up an interactive chart so that you could show information on demand. This is where again the same data is taken, but now we have a category performance report, okay, where the same type of panel chart is presented, but we can drill down and see for any particular quarter. You could use a slicer to pick the quarter, and instantly the charts get changed. You could see that for that particular quarter, what is the quantity across various panels and what was the trend. For example, in Q1 2013, biscuit product category went down by 5%, cakes went down by 13%. Whereas in 2014 Q3, this is the kind of percentage change across categories. In order to create these kind of charts, you not only need to have a good grasp about Excel charting, but you also need to use features like slicers, which are part of pivot tables, and combine the slicer concepts to the charts. So again, explaining this process of constructing this kind of chart is beyond the scope for our webinar, but I hope you got some ideas as to how you can create something like this very easily. Let me tell you, it doesn't take more than half an hour for somebody who is moderately skilled in Excel to create something like this. So my suggestion is, if you're curious, go ahead and download the example workbook and practice on that so that you can understand this better. Now let me switch to the presentation mode. Here is the link once again. I will make sure that once I stop talking, I'll paste this link in the chat box so that those of you who are curious to get this file, you can download it. So this is the link to that file, and if you like the presentation, please visit chandoo.org/love, which will direct you to Twitter, where you can share with your colleagues and friends about this webinar and tell them about the past BA conference. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I'll stick around and let me hand over the control to Avi, who is going to speak to you about Power BI and how you can use that to ride the productivity revolution in Excel.
Hi everybody, this is Chari here. Just while the changing presenters, all questions, if you don't mind, can you ask them at the end of Avi's presentation? Because we're a bit pressed for time and we'll have about 10 minutes at the end of the session to go through all the questions. Thank you.
Well, hey guys, thank you, Chandoo. It's an honor to be presenting in front of you, and it's an honor to share the virtual stage with the awesome Chandoo. So I'll be talking about PowerPivot. It's an Excel add-in by Microsoft as part of the Power BI family, and it's going to blow your socks off. Talking about socks, let me start with a personal story of my own socks. Now, I owned more than one pair, and that was the source of the problem. In my sock drawer, I could never find a matching pair, and in my rush to office, I would inevitably end up with mismatched socks. You all know how embarrassing that can be. That was until my sweet wife told me the trick that, hey, before you throw them in the sock drawer, you're supposed to line them up, find a matching pair, and roll them over. That way they stay together. Gosh, I was a better man, I was better dressed, I was more confident, and before I knew it, I was named the CEO of my company. Well, okay, the last part didn't happen. But really, it was a one-way change. One event happened, and then things were never the same again. PowerPivot brings the same to Excel. You're going to do things on top of Excel which would just seem inconceivable. And the best part is, it's not like you're going to throw away everything you've learned about Excel. No, PowerPivot builds on top of that and lets you do more, a lot more. So let's take a look at what does PowerPivot bring to Excel. Well, you got data, bring it. It handles all data, not just big data, but you can connect to all sorts of data sources and still have one-click or automated refresh. Next, it lets you model and analyze your data using the relationships that exist within the data. It introduces a radical new paradigm where, unlike Excel, where you fill your cells and sheets with formulas, you define your formulas just once and use them everywhere. We call that portability. Doesn't that sound too good to be true? The formula language, which is called DAX by the way, it's surprisingly easy to start with. It is quite Excel-like. It has a lot of functions which look and work just like Excel. Sum, max, min, average. But do not let that fool you. It has near limitless capabilities. I show two of them here. Distinct count. Gosh, how do you do that in Excel? And time intelligence, which we'll take a deeper look at. And lastly, it stands together. It stands together with the Power BI toolset, and they all work together to make your data shine. Power Pivot, Power Query, Power View, and the cloud and the server platform with Power BI and SharePoint. So for today's session, I'm going to just walk you through some of these steps. So I could talk a whole lot more about everything that I showed you, but I would rather let you experience it. All right, so I'm going to turn off the webcam and switch to Excel. So here I have my Excel workbook. This is Excel 2013. Power Pivot is also available in Excel 2010 as a free add-in. And this one I just clicked on the Power Pivot tab, and I'm going to start the goodness by clicking the Manage button up top. Now that launches my Power Pivot window. It's pretty bare right now, so we're going to start with the first step, which is pull data into Power Pivot. Now there are lots of options here. I wouldn't go into all of them. Instead, I'm going to click from Other Sources, and in our case, we're going to be using an Excel file. So we're going to use that, but you can explore this at your own time. There are certainly lots of data sources you can connect to, and whatever you find missing here, you would probably find that in Power Query. So Power Query is its cousin, and you can use that to feed data into your Power Pivot model. But for now, let's just grab our Excel file. Now it scans the files to see what kind of data is in there. And I'm just going to click this button at the top and pull in all of these tables. I'm going to click Finish, and it's going to pull the data into Power Pivot. Now Power Pivot is great at compression, so even though you're going to end up with a copy of the data, your file sizes are still going to be relatively small. All right, we're almost done. All right, there we go. So all our data has been pulled into my file. I'm going to save it real quick. All right, go back to Power Pivot. So you can see it has pulled all my data in, and as I said, you're not limited to just one connection. You can connect to a whole bunch of different data sources and pull all of that into Power Pivot in that single workbook and still have ability to just one click and refresh all of it. And I'm going to switch to the diagram view. So if you notice here, right now we're in the data view. I'm going to click the diagram view button to switch to that. And that's just a visual look. It shows me the tables that I have. And here I'm going to demonstrate the second powerful thing about Power Pivot, which is relationships. So here we have what we call data and lookup tables, right? So fact, internet sales, that's my sales data, every date, order quantity, order amount, and then what I call the who, what, where, when, how, right? Who did we sell it to? Who customer? What did we sell? What product? When did we sell it? Where did we sell it? The sales territory, and how? Maybe a promotion or something, right? So I have my fact data but then I have these lookup tables. Now, in Excel, if I had pulled this data in, I would be doing a whole army of VLOOKUPs, but you do not need that with PowerPivot. Instead, what we're going to do is just establish relationships between these tables using the common keys. And doing that is as easy as drag and drop. So I'm going to take the customer key and drag it over to my customer table. And that's going to establish the link between the two. No VLOOKUPs required. I'm going to do the same with my date table, with my product table, with my promotion, and sales territory. All right, well, great. Now, it looks visually pretty. It has these arrows going from here to there. But what does that really buy me? All right, so let's see, what does it actually get you? So for that, I'm going to insert a pivot table. And right here in the Power Pivot window, you have the pivot table button, and that lets you insert a friendly old pivot table, but this time it's going to be connected to all the magical goodness of Power Pivot. All right, let me move it just a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by defining a measure. And measures are unique. I talked about the formula language. You define a measure once, but then they're portable. You can slice and dice it using any of your relationships. So I'm going to start with for the first one, I simply want to define the sum of my sales amount. Let me spend a bit of time here. So here you specify the table you want the measure to be in. You give it a good name. You define the formula. And really this one is pretty simple. Doesn't need any explanation at all. Sum of a column. And finally you can specify the formatting. So I'm going to hit OK. And that's my first measure, which I just defined, right? But now comes the beauty part. Now let's see, so we've defined a measure in here in my internet sales table, but just by the virtue of these relationships with other tables, I can slice and dice it any way I want. So let's start with the customer. Maybe let's pull in the education, the occupation. Gosh, right? It lets you analyze, see it by that. Let's see something in the date table. We can do it by year, month. Same with the product. The category and subcategory. And so on and so forth, right? You can slice and dice by promotion, and of course you don't have to pick something just from one field. You can mix and match. You can slice it by year and the sales country. To do the same thing in Excel, you would have to flatten this whole thing, as I said, with an army of VLOOKUPs, and I actually tried to do that. That slowed my machine to a crawl, and this whole sheet was just full of formulas, and PowerPivot doesn't even blink an eye when trying to do this. And really, you're not even pushing the limits of PowerPivot. Here I have 60,000 rows. PowerPivot can easily handle millions and even hundreds of millions of rows. All right, now let's push it a little bit further. Like so far, what we have said is that, hey, yeah, you could do this in Excel as long as our data set wasn't in more than 1 million rows. but it's going to be really hard and really slow, really painful, right? So it makes it much easier. But I'm going to show you some things which become near impossible to do in Excel, at least in the flexible way that we're going to do it here. And I'm going to show you what we call time intelligence. It's a pretty common scenario where you want to compare sales year over year. So here we have sales for 2005, 6, 7, 8, but right next to it we want to show a number which shows me the sales for previous year. For this, I'm going to add a new measure. Again, measure are the the elixir of Power Pivot. To our same table, calculated field, new field. Let's try that. So let me talk about this formula a bit, right? So calculate is perhaps the most powerful DAX function of all, right? What it lets you do is it lets you alter the context in which the question is answered. So we're still doing the same math, if you noticed, as we did in the sales, the other formula. We're just doing sum, order, amount, but then you have the option to specify additional parameters to alter the context. And in this case, we are using one of the many available time intelligence functions to shift the time period 1 year backwards. So let's see how that works. Oop, I missed one thing. Let's go back to our data model. Sorry. And you just need to provide a hint to Power Pivot and tell it that, hey, this is my date table, and that is required for all of your time intelligence functions to work. So now that I've done that within the Power Pivot window, I just mark this as a date table right here. And now if you go back to Excel, look at this. So for 2006, current year sales 6.53, past year sales 3.26, and that we can confirm, we can validate, it matches the previous year, and the same deal with all of the other ones. Great, now let's quickly build on it. Usually you also want to see kind of year over year change and the same thing as a percentage. So we're going to add those measures. Yeah, don't worry too much about the syntax. But the lesson here is the portability of the formulas, and I'll demonstrate that in just a second. So we have the year-over-year delta. You can see this year we grew up by 3.26 million. And finally, let's define that as a percentage. And this one I'm going to format as a percentage. All right, that's pretty cool. Get rid of that. Oops. Now let's have some fun. All right, and this is where I was talking about where you're in the realm where doing this in Excel is going to be pretty near impossible. Right now, the formulas, they're only defined in one spot, right? So if you go to Manage Calculated Fields, this is it, sales previous year. And these ones, sales year-over-year percentage, doesn't say anything about can we do it by, is it by customer, by year, by category? All of that you get for free by virtue of relationships, right? So we have all the relationships established, and we can leverage that to slice and dice any new measure we define, right? And our sales year-over-year percentage kind of reuses these previous measures to build upon it, the formula, right? And reuse is a good thing, but that doesn't mean you have to have that in the pivot. So I can take away sales previous year, sales year-over-year, and only have the year-over-year percentage. And let's look at it for just a single year. I'm going to pick 2008. And now again, by the virtue of relationships, you can slice and dice it using any of your product fields. So let's look at it by our category and subcategory. Right, let's add some color to it. And here, let's look at it by our month. Oh boy, that's not that much fun. Let's try something else. Maybe by customer, by their occupation. I'll do one more. Region. So just one formula, but you can reuse it over and over again, right? Totally, completely portable. You define it once, use it everywhere, and then you leverage the power of your relationships to slice and dice it any way you want. Doing this in Excel, gosh, that would be nightmarish. Most likely you would end up with something hard-coded, built for a purpose, and making any change to it is usually quite a Herculean task. All right, so hopefully that gave you a taste of what Power Pivot and Power BI can offer. So a quick recap of what we saw. You can pull in all different data sets and still have one-click refresh within Power Pivot. Certainly you can handle big data, millions, hundreds of millions of rows. You can model and analyze using the power of relationships. And you have this new paradigm of your formulas. You define them once, use them everywhere. And lastly, it's part of the Power BI toolset. We couldn't show you that in this demo, but yeah, it works great with Power Query to source data in, and for Power View to visualize data, and of course with the cloud elements on Power BI. And if this looked easy, don't let that fool you. This is like having a F1 Formula racing engine under the hood of a Honda Accord or something, right? This is still industrial strength, right? So you can start off with Power Pivot, but then scale it all the way up to organizational BI. So you can have it just for your personal use or use with hundreds of users. And the Power BI cloud platform works across all of it. So it's still useful if you're using for yourself, but you can use it for your entire organizations with hundreds of users and leverage advanced functionalities like data catalog, where you publish and query data sets amongst the different organization users. So folks, hopefully you liked what you heard from me and Chandoo. I think we're living in certainly exciting times around Excel, business intelligence, and Power BI. We have a lot more in the Business Analytics Conference. We have pre-conference sessions and the regular sessions, so hopefully you will join us for that, and we hope to see you at the BA conference in April. All right, so we'll open up for questions, and Jody will help us with that.
Cool. So thanks everybody for attending. So just here are some questions. One was from Stan. Let me just get Stan's one. From Stan Sable. Firstly, Stan says, great presentation. Can you show an example where you look for major variances rather than just up and down from month to month.
Is that all?
I think that's to Chandoo, right?
Yes, that was
Yeah.
for Chandoo.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
And then, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So let me rephrase the question. How do you show major changes from over a period of time? Is that the question?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question is, can you show an example where you look for major variances rather than just up and down from month
Okay.
to month?
Yeah. Good question. And many times, especially when you are, for example, let's say you are in quality control, the values you monitor do not change over time. Your quality is pretty high all the time, and you need to be alerted not for minor changes in quality. For example, you are having 99% of quality. A drop to 98.5% is not something that you would be worried about, but a drop to 90% is something that you want to be alerted on. So you can use conditional formatting in such situations where you set up a rule that says highlight in red color or make it something outright in bold only when the percentage change or absolute change is beyond this threshold. And for all others, you just dim the whole data. For example, just make it in a very dull shade of gray or something like that, so it doesn't catch eye. And when you are panning the data over millions of rows or thousands of columns, anything that is bright red will catch your eye, and you can be sure that that is an area where you need attention. Same can be used when you are monitoring, I don't know, maybe a bunch of stock prices and you wanted to see where the steep drops or steep hikes are happening. And this is something that many people do every day, right? So these are two things that come to my mind.
Okay. Thank you, Chandoo. Avi, we've got another one here for you from Raleigh. It says, the last row shows 100% in year-on-year percentage. He wants to know how do you blank this?
Wait, sorry, I was on mute. Okay, let me try again. Yeah, that's a good question. So time intelligence measures often do not work quite right, at least as far as humans are concerned. So as far as PowerPivot is concerned, it's doing its job, right? But humans are a lot more intuitive than the PowerPivot DAX engine. So we say, hey, that doesn't look right. So yeah, that is sometimes a challenge. And a way around that is typically to detect where you are, if something is filtered or not, and then blank it out. So you can try. Yeah, I'm not gonna have time to do it here, but you can try an if statement and use one of the filtering functions. Let's say it has one filter to detect whether you're filtering on anything or not. Right? If not, then you're in the grand total row, and then you can say, hey, if that's the case, then return a blank. Otherwise, you return your calculation. So give that a shot. And yeah, if you need help, go to PowerPivotPro.com and search on has one filter. And you should pull on some examples.
Thanks. We've got quite a few questions here for you. One from Gwen is, she says she hates VLOOKUPs. How can she win? How can I win an argument using PowerPivot instead?
Oh gosh, that is a good one. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to like this answer, but yeah, I've fought many a battle in my times, and the challenge is that all of these BI tools have the exact same pitch, right? Power Pivot, Power BI, and all of its competitors, anything out there, and they all say, hey, use us, and we're going to solve every BI problem that you have. So yes, it's hard to have a sales pitch or say, hey, look at this, and this is why it's special. My take is it's best experienced. So the most common success stories I've heard is where people have just used PowerPivot, an analyst has taken it, as I did in my time, and just built something off of it. and then people noticed, and it just grew from there. So it has been a very grounds-up story. Now I hope that changes, especially as Microsoft is adding its voice around messaging around PowerPivot. But my recommendation would be just build something and show them the value that it can bring.
Okay, and then we've got another one from Oscar Zapata for you. Is PowerPivot compatible with the Power BI site and Power BI editor?
Yeah, that's okay. I like that question. Yes. So but the Power BI Designer, that's what it's called. So that is standalone, and that lets you build models and upload to Power BI. They would work there, but you're not going to. I'm not sure. As far as I know, you cannot edit those in Excel. You would continue to use Power BI Designer if you're using that. Again, that's still in preview, so we don't know what the shape of these things are going to be. We are looking forward as well to the more news announcements around Office 2016 and how these elements blend together. But for now, that's where things stand with the Power BI Designer. As if you're using Excel and Power BI, yes, you would build a model in Excel, and then you would upload it to Power BI, and you would be able to leverage everything that's on there. Natural language Q&A, the new dashboard functionality, all of that would certainly work. It's built to work with the Excel Power Pivot models.
Okay, and then another one for you, Avi, from John Zukowski. Do you have any recommendations about where to find online training about how to integrate Power BI with SSAS Tabular and SharePoint Online?
Oh boy. Power Pivot and SSAS, Power BI and SSAS and SharePoint Online. I've never heard all three mentioned together, but I think it's possible, and I think your common thread is SSAS Tabular. So check the MSDN blog for a recent announcement on Power BI supporting a connection to an on-premises SSAS Tabular. And I'll try to pull up the link, and I'll share that in the chat window, or actually I may send that to Jody and he can share it. Yes, so if you're using SSAS Tabular, Power BI now has an option that lets you connect your site, Power BI site in the cloud, to an on-premises SSAS Tabular server. Now that's a great win, right? Because otherwise you could have this beautiful model in SSAS Tabular, right, which you had built over the years, which you could not use with Power BI. So now that's no longer the case. You can integrate those two, and SharePoint certainly integrates with SSAS Tabular. So that is done. You can establish a data connection file to your SSAS Tabular machine, and then you're free to build Power BI reports and such on your SharePoint site. So yeah, give that a try, and I'll try to send you the link.
Okay, and then another one, what's the way to go to have the Power Pivot functionality on the browser internet? Former OWC. It's a question from Wagner.
Sorry, say that again?
Wagner asks, what's the way to have Power Pivot functionality on the browser?
Yeah, that's I like that question. So there are a few ways. The most common that has been used is SharePoint. So SharePoint has Excel services, and what you do is you build an Excel Power Pivot model. Frankly, it can be just an Excel model, but hey, now you know what all Power Pivot can do, so why not use that? So you build an Excel Power Pivot model, and then you build your reports in the Excel side where you have pivot tables, you have slicers, you can have all the conditional formatting goodness that Chandoo showed you, and you upload it on SharePoint. And SharePoint has Excel services which lets you render that Excel workbook right inside the browser. The person viewing it does not even need to have Office installed in the machine. They can not only see it inside the browser, they can also interact with it. All the slicers that Chandoo showed you, they're still active. You can click on them and the reports would update and so forth. So that's one way. Another way is, of course, the Power BI, the cloud platform that has a few options. Once you upload a workbook, you can build reports and dashboards on the Power BI platform itself. And something new that it has is ability to embed your interactive reports in other sites, even in public sites like blogs and so forth. And I'll share that with Jody, and maybe he can pass that on to the audience. So I just share that link, or you can just go to MSDN blogs and search for embed Power View.
Okay, and then one last question before we wrap up, guys, from Tom Jacob. It's for you, Avi. Power BI is now available with Office 365. Power BI is available now with Office 365 only. Office 2016 will be offered as an alternative to Office 365. When will Office 2016 be available?
Well, so yeah, I don't work for Microsoft, and certainly they haven't made any public announcement of that. Just reading the news and all, I've seen a date of September later this year, right? But I'm not sure that statement is entirely true. You can use Power BI with certainly Excel 2013. Actually, you know what? Now with the Power BI Designer, you don't even need to have Excel or Office, right? You can design a model using the Power BI Designer. So don't feel like Power BI is only for Office 365. I know it all gets kind of confusing with all these different versions and so forth, but give it a try. If you have Excel, build a Power Pivot model, upload it to Power BI. If you don't have that, try out the new Power BI Designer. And of course, the Power BI signups are free, so no reason not to give it a try.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Just before closing, I'd just like to, Avi, if you can just bring up the virtual chapter slide, please.
There we go.
So guys, thanks everybody for attending. I'd like to thank Chandoo and Avi. If you're interested in accessing other free educational content, the PASS organization has a variety of virtual chapters which offer free webinars to their members every month. Check out upcoming webinars and recordings of past webinars for business analytics, Excel BI, business intelligence, big data, and cloud virtual chapters by visiting www.sequelpass.org/VC. Thanks everybody.